You know that feeling when someone raises their voice, even slightly, and something in your body goes somewhere where your mind didn't choose to go. When a person you care about doesn't respond to your message, and within 30 minutes, you've already written the whole story of how they're pulling away from you. Or when everything is actually fine, work is okay, life is manageable, and nothing is on fire. But somewhere underneath it all, there's a low hum of anxiety that just lives there, quietly, maybe even permanently. If any of this sounds familiar, this chat is for you. Welcome to the Daily Development Dose. Today we're talking about something a lot of us carry around with us without realizing that it has a name. Childhood trauma and the adult it made. And before you click off, you may think, my childhood wasn't that bad. Just stay with me. Because the most important thing that I want to say today is that it doesn't have to be a dramatic thing to have happened for it to leave a mark and condition the person that you've become today. When you hear childhood trauma, people picture the worst case scenarios. And yes, abuse, neglect, violence, losing a parent, those are trauma without question. But in the 1990s, researchers ran one of the most significant studies ever conducted on the subject. They called it the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. And they followed over 17,000 people over time. What they found was that adverse childhood experiences come in for more shapes than people expect, or than most people expect. A parent with untreated mental illness, chronic poverty and the fear that came with it, watching adults fight in a home, a parent who was incarcerated, being the child nobody really checked up on because the grown-ups around were too busy surviving their own lives. The more of these experiences that you might have had before the age of 18, the higher your likelihood of depression, anxiety, addiction, and even physical illness later in life. Weight that is never put down changes the shape of the person carrying it. So what does the list actually look like? The obvious causes first. So, physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, witnessing domestic violence. We know these. We name them when we see them. Then there is the less visible list, the one that explains a lot more of our adults. Emotional neglect, different from physical neglect, and arguably more confusing. Because from the outside, everything looks fine. Food is on the table. Nobody's hitting anyone. Nobody's really asking you how you are either, though. Nobody is sitting with you when you feel things that feel hard. You're expected to be fine. So you learn to perform fine so thoroughly that eventually you forget that you weren't. Then there is parentification. The child who became the emotional manager of the household, who knew not to bring their problems home because home already had enough. The child who was 9 years old, explaining the electricity bill, or translating adult stress into something their younger siblings couldn't digest. A child who does that job but is still a child. The fact that they did it well does not mean that they should have been asked to do so. You know, when I go through this, I just young Sheldon just popped up in my mind, and I guess Sheldon wasn't lacking this access, such that he had to become a parent but the kind of child who has to be responsible for taking care of the bills, or understanding what the bills mean, and saving the electricity. Those are problems that an adult should be dealing with. So I'm just thinking like fondly at Sheldon's father asking him to evaluate his tax for him, and it was a humorous thing, but if not controlled, that can fester into a very dangerous cause for conditioning in an adult who is unexpecting. There is chronic unpredictability as another cause of trauma, the kind of traumas that we don't really see or observe on a daily basis. Chronic unpredictability manifests or presents in a home where the temperature changed constantly, where you never knew which version of a parent was coming through the door, where good days felt suspicious because you were always quietly waiting for the turn. Children who grow up in a chronically unpredictable environment become adults who are always invisibly and exhaustingly braced for impact. That just sounds like anxiety. Does that not sound like some anxiety you've observed or maybe have experienced? And then there's what Gabor Mate, a physician who spent decades working with people in addiction and trauma, calls the trauma of disconnection. The quiet, repeated experience of not being seen, of having your inner world consistently overlooked, being told directly or by how you were treated that your feelings were too much or not enough or simply just inconvenient. None of these require a single dramatic event. The wound can be made slowly over years by 1,000 small experiences of not being held. Now, the effects. This is the part where the jig gets up. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book called Your Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read it, it certainly belongs on your shelf. His finding, after years of working with trauma survivors, is that trauma doesn't just live in your memories. It lives in your nervous system. Your body responds to present situations as if they're past dangers, because that's how it learned to survive, and it never received the message that things had changed. So, what would that possibly look like in your day-to-day? It could look like someone who cannot handle conflict, any conflict, even a mildly tense conversation, and will do almost anything to avoid it. At some point in their life, conflict meant danger, and the nervous system filed that information away and never cleared it. It looks like the overachiever who cannot rest, who ties their worth so tightly to their output that a quiet weekend feels like a slow emergency. If love in your home felt conditional, if approval came from performance, your brain learned that being enough meant doing enough. And that equation went into everything. It looks like the person who, the moment things get serious in a relationship, start creating distance. Not consciously, but some part of them became certain that closeness leads to pain, that they engineer the exit before anyone else can. I break up with you before you break up with me. I win. It looks like the people pleaser who says yes to everything and then resents everyone, who monitors other people's emotional states as a second job that nobody hired them for. Because at some point, keeping everyone comfortable was how they stayed safe. It looks like being triggered by something small, a tone of voice, being ignored for a few minutes, a piece of criticism, and responding with an intensity that doesn't match the moment. That intensity belongs to another time. It just got misdirected. And sometimes, and this one usually surprises people, it looks like success. Yeah. Some people who grew up in difficult homes become extraordinarily driven, extraordinarily capable people, and extraordinarily self-reliant, because they learned early that the only reliable person in the room was themselves. And they carried that into adulthood and built real things from it. But underneath the capability is often exhaustion. Someone who never learned to ask for help because asking was never safe. Now, our specific context matters. We grew up in a culture where strength and survival was the key, where what happened in the home stayed in the home, where children must be seen and not heard wasn't just a phrase, it was a way of organizing the household, where you prayed through things, sang through things, and got on with it, where processing your feelings aloud was a luxury nobody had a language for. And some of us grew up with parents who are doing the exact same thing, carrying their own unprocessed childhoods, grief that had no container, fear that had no name, so they gave us what they had. And what they had was what their parents gave to them. This is what generational trauma actually means. It's unprocessed pain moving from one generation to the next, because nobody was given the tools or the permission to stop and sit with it. You are not your parents' wounds, but you might be carrying some of them. And knowing what you're holding is where the putting down begins. So, where could you possibly start? Start with curiosity about your triggers. A trigger is simply a present moment thing activating a past moment wound. The next time you have a reaction that feels bigger than the situation, instead of criticizing yourself for it, get curious. Ask yourself, when did I first feel like this? Who does this remind me of? What does the younger version of me need right now that I'm not giving them? Look at your patterns, the people you keep attracting, the ways you behave under pressure, the stories you tell yourself about whether you're lovable, whether you're safe, or whether you're enough. Those patterns didn't start with your current situation. They started much earlier, and they'll keep showing up until something shifts. Look up the ACE questionnaire. It's free online. It takes about 5 minutes, and it asks about 10 categories of adverse childhood experiences. Your score doesn't determine your life, but it can be a useful mirror, a place to start. Read van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. Gabor Mate and Oprah Winfrey's What Happened to You, which reframes the whole conversation from what's wrong with you to what happened to you. And Dr. Nicole Lepera's How to Do the Work, probably the most practical of the three for someone who is just beginning. Once again, the SADAG has this very free counseling line. I think we should change the name of this show to SADHG free counseling line. SADHG DAG is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. And their toll-free counseling line is 0800 456 789. If talking to a professional feels too far away for you right now, a conversation is still a conversation. I want to stop and ask you something before we close. Is there something that clicked as you were listening to this. A pattern that you recognize in yourself that looks a little different now that you have some context for it. A thing from your childhood that you've been carrying but never quite had a name for. Leave that in the comments. Give us a reflection of what came to your mind. Let's raise this awareness for the next person who listens to this and maybe share their story. Share yours so that they can share theirs. And do this if you're comfortable, okay? Because it might be an exercise that requires you to open a very, very tightly sealed door. You don't need to share the whole story. Even I see myself in this is enough. And then frame which kind of the invisible traumas or unusual or undefined traumas that I described earlier relate best to you. Because sometimes the most unexpected healing is simply finding out that you're not the only one. Maya Angelou said something that just keeps coming back to me from time to time. She said, "I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better." Is that how it sounds? I did then what I knew how to do. Now that I know better, I do better. You survived what you survived by doing what you had to do. The coping strategies that got you through childhood were intelligent. They were adaptive. They served you well for the time and the environment that they were built in. The work now is updating the software, learning that the situation has changed and that some of the old programs can be retired. The brain is more changeable than we were taught to believe. You didn't choose what happened to you as a child, and you're not stuck carrying it forever. Slowly, imperfectly so, but forward. That brings us to the end of today's dose of development. You'll be hearing from me again tomorrow. Sayonara.